I'm Daniel Kehlmann, author of the novel The Director.
Daniel, we're so glad to have you here. This is your 7th book. Your last novel was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize, but you're here today for your newest book, The Director. How would you describe it in one sentence?
In one sentence, it's a historical novel about a man who is a very famous director. He flees the Nazi dictatorship, goes to Hollywood, and then for complicated reasons goes back and makes films for Goebbels and for the Nazi Ministry of Propaganda without being a Nazi himself. So it's a story of moral compromise and about everyday life in the Third Reich.
It's a work of historical fiction, a genre you've explored in several of your books. How do you balance blending fact and fiction when you are writing about real people and events?
I think what you have to do when you write this kind of novel is you have to do what journalists are not allowed to do and historians are not allowed to do, which is you have an idea of what it probably was like, what probably happened, what it probably felt like, what you're pretty sure people did, and then you invent that story. And you can't invent something that you feel could not have happened. But also, if you completely stick to the facts, to the known facts, then you're not writing a novel. So you have to explore that, I would say, vague realm of possibility of what could have happened, but also what you are pretty much sure would have made sense.
Your father grew up in Europe during that time. What was his experience during World War II?
My father was born in 1927, so he was a teenager at the peak of the Nazi period in Austria, where him and his parents lived, and they were a Jewish family. And my grandfather had some documents forged in a clever way, and had his wife declared as half Jewish by claiming and paying witnesses for it that she was the illegitimate daughter of the caretaker of the house of her parents. So it's kind of a crazy story. That would be a different novel in itself. So, but they were a half-Jewish family in the terms of the times, and they were always threatened. My grandfather lost his job. My father was in a concentration camp towards the end of the year, towards the end of the war, in the last year of the war, for 3 months. So he gave me lots of stories of what everyday life was like in the Third Reich, and what it was like to attend school, and what it was like to have real fascist Nazi teachers, like party member Nazi teachers, and all that, what the neighbors behaved like, the way you couldn't talk because you had to remember that the neighbors could hear you, and all these things. And I was able to draw on those stories of what everyday life was like, of what it really felt like. And that was extremely helpful. And of course also felt good to me to use all these things that my father had to suffer through in a way that I hope he would have liked too.
This is a book about moral compromise. Did writing this book change the way you think about complicity?
It did a little bit. It did. It made it clear to me that complicity, if you are living in a dictatorship or in a country that's transforming into dictatorship, complicity is such a big word. What it is for most people most of the time is just everyday life. And a dictatorship transforms your everyday life in a way that that complicity is happening all the time. I mean, all the time you're not saying something you want to say because somebody could hear you, and you're not sure where people are who are talking to in their loyalties or their opinions. That is already complicity. But on the other hand, you have to adapt to where you are, to your surroundings, to the political insanity you're living in to a certain extent. So it's a very complicated gray zone. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that you should just say, oh, I was lucky. I wasn't born back then, and who knows what I would have done. That's always kind of already you're already throwing up your hands and are saying everything's kind of fine because I probably would have done the same. What you should say is, I hope I would have done the right thing. And when you see the world around you transform into a dictatorship, which we see in some countries right now, is you should still remember that it's very important that you do the right thing every day.
One of the most unsettling consequences of Paps' choices is reflected in the person his son grows up to be.
Yes. Yeah.
Why did you want to emphasize the impact on his son?
Because that is his biggest moral failing, in my feeling, in my sense. His biggest moral failing is that he goes back. Yes, he goes back. That's definitely a mistake. He lets himself be pressured and coaxed into making films, and he tries to make good films with the means the Nazis give him, and he actually succeeds to a certain degree. And that's all bad, but it's complicated. But what's not complicated is his son is a free, gifted, intelligent kid who goes to a school in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and then he sends him to a boarding school in Nazi Germany, subjected to the full pressure of the system. And no 14-year-old can sustain a healthy soul and life of the mind under this pressure, and it breaks his son, and it breaks him in the way that he becomes a perpetrator himself. He becomes a bully because that's what the system encourages, the Nazi school system. He becomes somebody who completely identifies with the system, and you really cannot blame him. You have to blame his father, who brought him back and then sends him to that boarding school. So I felt like the best way to think about what the totalitarian state does is to write about what it does to children. It's because they cannot escape the forces that destroy their souls in those systems.
The director in this book is driven by an urge to make art that he feels is important and necessary in the world. What power do you believe a work of art can have in the world?
I think it's different for different kinds of art. What I feel can speak about is the power of novel writing and novel reading. And that's, novels are, if they're well written and if they're good novels, they're schools of empathy in a way. You learn to think and to feel as someone else. Even movies cannot really do that. If you watch a movie, even if it's a great movie, you look at other people from outside. You look at them as, people who are not you. But if you read a book, you are other people in a way while you're reading it. You think with their head, you feel their feelings. Or that's what a novel does if it really works for you. And so it's a school of empathy, it's a school of understanding other people to a deep emotional level. And so you become a more empathetic human being by reading novels. That's something I deeply believe in.
So you're saying that art is still a worthy pursuit in times of turmoil and tyranny?
I think it's more necessary than ever. It's also the place where true resistance can live. I mean, art will always find a way to speak free and speak in a free and truthful way about the pressures and the political insanity we live in, and if we can't do that anymore, then the only thing we have to do is to leave and to try to get out of there. The freedom of art is kind of the ultimate border we have to defend. And if we lose that, then all we have to do is to save our lives and run away.
You wrote this book in German, and then it was translated to English by award-winning translator Ross Benjamin. What is that collaboration like for you as the author?
It's wonderful and interesting for me. Ross is a great translator. He translated Franz Kafka and was showered with awards for that, rightfully. And he translated Hölderlin, which is one of the hardest German writers to read, even in the original. So I don't know how he did that. So his knowledge of German is absolutely perfect. But when he's working on one of my books, and this is the third book we've published together in English, we're constantly in touch and constantly sending emails back and forth. He has lots of questions, which I love and encourage, and I make it a priority to answer. So whatever I'm doing, if I see there's an email from Ross with a translation question, I'm firing off an answer on my phone right away, really fast, if I can. Sometimes I have to look something up, but I'm trying to make it an absolute priority to always answer. And then of course I read what he comes up with, and I read it closely. And very rarely I have a question when I'm like, do you think there's another way to say this a little bit better? And I make a suggestion. And then and that happens sometimes, when he says, yeah, okay, I think you're right, this is a great day for me. Because of course, obviously his English is so much better than mine. And that's always a day when I feel like very good about my English. But it rarely happens, because usually when Ross has a solution, it's the right solution.
If you knew you were going to be stuck in a foreign country for a few months, and let's just say you have no access to books while you're there, but you can bring one book, what book would you bring?
That's an easy one. It would always be War and Peace by Tolstoy. It's my all-time favorite novel. And it's a novel that you can never get to the bottom of. There's always something else, and it's so wonderful. And of course, knowing where I am, I would also say, if for whatever reason they say any other book than War and Peace, I would say Lord of the Rings.
Good answer. Do you have a piece of advice you give to aspiring writers?
Yes. It's a very simple advice. It's write a lot. Write a lot. Don't publish a lot, but just write all the time. Put in the hours. Just write. And accept that most of what you're writing is terrible. And that does not necessarily change. Even when you've published 10 books, you still have to have the courage to be at home and write, and it's terrible. But no one has to see it. But by writing something that doesn't quite work, you move yourself into the zone where everything will start to come into place, and you feel like, now I'm getting somewhere, and then it will get better. But don't be discouraged when you feel I'm writing, but it's not great. Yeah, that's just everyday life of the writer. But you need to put in the hours, and also you can only edit something. You can only make something better. You can only polish something if you've written it before. And that sounds very banal, but the important thing is to actually put words on paper or the screen or whatever device you use, but put down words.
That is great advice. Thanks for being here, Daniel. The Director is available everywhere books are sold. For Late Show Book Club updates, follow our Instagram @ColbertLateShow.